Task elimination heuristics is related to the value-added analysis technique we saw in the context of qualitative process analysis. In value-added analysis, we recognize that there are some steps in a process that are non-value adding, and other steps that are business value adding, meaning they do not add value to the customer, but they are required by the business. What task elimination tells us as a heuristics is that we should start by trying to eliminate non-value adding steps wherever these steps can be isolated. Particularly when we have steps that are clearly about forwarding, sending, or receiving documents or data around the process with no value added to it. Similarly, we should consider, if not eliminating, at least reducing control steps such as checks, approvals, and verifications, or replacing manual control steps with automated control steps. In other words, where it is feasible, where a control step is found not to be essential, we should consider eliminating it. It is rarely the case that a business process will have such a case where a check will be completely useless. There is always a reason why this check is there. So what we can consider, instead of eliminating, which might not be feasible and is actually not very often feasible, is to replace this manual check with a statistical control. This means instead of checking for every instance of the process, we will skip the check, and from time to time we will pick a sample of a process instance and we will review what will have been the outcome of the check. And if we find that indeed the check will have found an error, we then try to fix it. We then try to estimate how often these bad cases are going through because we have not done this check. And we will then determine if we want to continue skipping the check or we want to reinstate it into the process. The third option for eliminating checks is to try to partially or fully automate them, by inserting an automatic check to sort the cases into those where we are pretty sure there is no error, and then we let them through, and those that might actually require a manual check, and then those ones we will channel them to the manual checking task. When we apply task elimination, we have to consider the trade-off between the cost of the check and the cost of not doing it, meaning the cost of letting through a defective process instance that might later cause us problems. Examples of task elimination in a procure-to-pay process are, for example, the fact that we might empower employees to trigger isolated one-off purchase orders for certain items if they are below a certain amount without supervisor approval. Another example, this time in the context of an order-to-cash process, is to have a list of trusted suppliers. When we receive invoices from those trusted suppliers that are below a certain threshold, we do not check them, at least not on a one-by-one systematic basis. Instead, we let them through and we perform a statistical control every so often to determine if there are any cases where we have paid an invoice to a supplier, meaning an invoice below the threshold of 1,000, that we shouldn't have paid. Task elimination has an effect in terms of the time dimension, the cost dimension, and the quality dimension of performance. Because we eliminate a task, clearly we get a faster process, so it improves along the time dimension. Along the cost dimension, in some cases we can improve the cost, or meaning reduce it, or in some cases we can make it worse. It depends, as we stated above, on the trade-off between the cost of the check and the cost of skipping the check, and then later correcting the defects that have gone through. Along the quality dimension, task elimination more often than not tends to have a negative effect. Why? Because in essence, by eliminating, for example, checks, we are letting through defective process instances, and we are detecting errors later at a point where they might already have had an impact, and it is very costly to undo it.